Goes by the short bus. I'm in the captain window licker seat here.
The caboose?
Yeah. Licking the windows, keeping them clean. This is the start of an adventure that'll go for many, many miles.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back. I am going to be going over the bus build in this video, explaining in more detail what I did, how much stuff cost. I know people have been asking about that. So, yeah, let's get into it. Yeah, so what I got was a 2010 Chevy Express 2500 converted bus. Bus had 100,000 miles on it, 0 engine issues, which was amazing. It's in between 25 and 27 feet long. In the framing of it, there wasn't really any rust at all. I mean, a little bit of surface rust, but nothing that major. After we pulled out the roof and pulled out the insulation that they already had in there, and it's really crappy insulation, went ahead and started with pulling out those chairs. The goal with pulling out these chairs was to possibly salvage them and sell them on Facebook Marketplace. However, they were such a pain in the butt to cut these things out. I mean, I wasn't even trying to cut them out. We were just trying to drill them out. And they were so on there that we had to angle grind them out. And basically, they weren't salvageable. So we had to scrap them. And from here, we basically just had to tear out the floor and clean everything up so that we could move on to the next part, which wasn't terribly hard. So what you see here right now is me. I'm spraying the windows that were going to be blocked out by insulation and walls. I didn't want people to see in or see the insulation, so I used frosted glass spray paint, and it worked for the most part. I would recommend spray painting the windows black from the inside, or putting up pieces of plywood that are spray painted black and pushing that, like smashing that in between. I mean, you can't see in or see that it's insulation, but if you walk up and you look close enough, then you see like the pink insulation. It's not a bad thing, it's not a great thing, but that's just a little advice if you plan on doing something like this. Whoa, pause the video. Okay, listen. So after going through this and editing it, I realized that I, for some reason, decided to say a lot of the same thing. Alright, I start saying slap it in a lot, and I have no idea why I do this, so I kind of make a joke in this and add a sound effect. Anyway, on with the video. So yeah, we framed this out with 2x2s, slapped that together, threw up the insulation. After that, got 1/4-inch plywood, threw that together, slapped that on there, basically smashed that in between. I recommend for insulation, this insulation has been super warm. We got, I believe, M13 or M16 insulation, and I mean, the foam board insulation, in my opinion, doesn't do near as good of a job. And that's why we decided to go with regular insulation rather than the foam board insulation. So right here, when you see me spray painting on the ground, all right, this was me envisioning in that moment, literally in that moment, hey, this is what I want here, this is what I want here, I'm gonna do this there. And, you know, that was just my idea behind it. So I'm just kind of mentally making a note right then and there off the top of my head, like, hey, this is how I wanna do it. The reason why we went with plywood for the roof was basically so that we can have more space when it comes to height versus using 1x4s all the way up. However, plywood doesn't curve as tight as the 1x4s, so we ended up using 1x4s to cover up the corners that were left exposed in between the walls and the ceiling. Okay, so one thing I wish I would have done is when I boxed up this wheel, I wish I would have just slapped some insulation in there. I had extra insulation. I don't know why I didn't. Should have just slapped it in there. It would have been nice just to have that. Not that it's a huge deal. Like I said, we've stayed warm, but it's just, if you're boxing up your wheels, just go ahead. It takes 2 seconds. Slap it in there. Makes it way better. You know, a bed takes up a ton of space, and a lot of people will build with storage underneath the bed. I wanted to be able to have a bed that could flip up. I was like, I want a Murphy bed. So that's kind of where I did it, and I couldn't figure out, I mean, I probably took apart the parts that hold up the bed 2 or 3 times before figuring out the right length and depth for it to actually work as a Murphy bed. And this bed took a lot longer than you expected to. Or at least way longer than I expected it to take. So moving on from the bed, I basically went into constructing a big closet space that's basically full of shelves. We use this mostly for clothing. We do have a few simple items such as groceries that don't need to be refrigerated. And, you know, having all this space has been very, very helpful while living on the road. With 2 people, you fill it up very, very fast. fast. So we got to be kind of strategic on how much we decided to pack together and what we decided to bring on the road with us. But having this cabinet space has been absolutely amazing. After constructing the cabinet space, I went straight into building up around the second wheel well. My plan was to put water tanks on top of this wheel well, so in order to do so, I had to make this one a lot more sturdy than the first one. From there, we went straight into installing the original speakers that the bus actually came with. And these speakers were actually really good quality, so we decided to keep them and install them into the roof. And then from there, we went on to add more of the 1/2-inch plywood for the ceiling. We cut them into strips so that it would cover up the cracks that were in between each sheet that we had laid out for the ceiling. Framing out everything over here was actually not bad. It's pretty simple. So my original thought process on this was from the closest point to us to the far end of the bus, it was going to end up being a kitchen, a shower, then on top of the wheel wells was going to be a water tanks, and then after that was going to be a restroom. We never ended up turning the shower into a shower. Instead, we ended up making that into a closet space, which I personally prefer so that we have more storage. So from here, I know at this point it's really hard to see from the camera angle. However, what we're doing is we're taking out all of the stickers, taking out the camera that's up there, and getting it ready to paint. So getting everything prepared to paint is totally a pain in the butt. It's a lot more work and a lot more tedious than you'd like it to be, but basically you got to sand everything down, tape up everything, clean up everything, then prime it, and then paint it. And it's really cool to watch this because it really brings to life the room once you add that coat of paint. Once we got into flooring, I was like, yo, vinyl flooring, super easy. I've laid flooring, you know, and that is super easy. Vinyl is the way to go. Super easy to mop and clean, you know, so less mess in the future. Cheap, relatively cheap. You know, I can't remember exactly what I bought these for, this for, or how much I spent on the flooring, but I do know it was pretty cheap. I would recommend vinyl flooring for sure. After putting in the flooring, we went straight into putting in the trim, and I wanted to leave all of the trim in exposed pine wood, leave it exposed. I didn't want to prime it or paint it or anything like that. I just wanted to leave it so that it was pine and white, and it makes everything look nice and match up perfectly together. When we were originally planning on painting the bus, we were like thinking at first, hey, let's just leave these black strips on. And then you start looking at it and you're like, man, these things are ugly as shit. Like, let's stand out as a school bus as much as we can, right? So no, I had to gut that out, and getting those off was a complete pain in the ass. Totally worth it because it looks phenomenal now without it. But what you see me doing here is after we pulled those off, we had to sand it down because you had all these little holes from, you know, the screws holding it in. So you had to sand down those holes. After you sand those down, clean everything off. Once you clean everything off, all the dust, all the, you know, crap that's in there, we went and used Bondo, which Bondo is used for like repairing holes and cracks in vehicles. So, you know, we Bondoed that on, and Bondo, it's an amazing thing to use, but it is a pain in the ass for sure. And after you Bondo it, in order for that to stay in good shape and not start rusting around the metal, you gotta prime it. So immediately primed it. Once we primed it, we're like, hey, I'm gonna slap in where this hole, where the stop sign is, that's where our shore power outlet is. And took it over to a shop where we actually had it professionally painted, and ended up being one of our most expensive costs total for the bus. And the reason why our price is higher than we expected on spending, we paid $4,000 to get this thing painted. $4 grand. That sucks. You know, it is what it is, but at the end of the day, that's what we did. So if you're trying to save money, do not get it professionally painted at all. Screw that. Like most companies that professionally paint probably haven't painted a bus. So it's going to be probably better than what you're going to do. Yeah, it's definitely better than what I was going to do, but it's still not as nice as if you were to go get your car repainted, right? So keep that in mind. For now, this is all I'm going to show for this video. The next video will be coming out soon, where I'll get into detail about the next and expenses. And at the end, I will tell you the final costs on everything. So stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching. Subscribe. Literally. Like the video. Like. I'll wait. It's cool, I'll wait. No problem. Alright, that's it.
What's there to hold in the light of this moon? My mind keeps searching, but my heart decides.